Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. Puzzles are a huge thing in games. They can be used for anything from hacking into a door, unlocking some new upgrades, or unlocking a dungeon or something like that. Anything from action games, horror games, RPGs, sci-fi, most games will have some sort of puzzle aspect. So in today's tutorial, what I'm going to recreate is a very basic Skyrim-esque puzzle where I have these three standing runes here, and then you can walk up to each one of them and activate it, and only when you activate them in the correct sequence will it turn the middle one on and then give you some form of upgrade or something. So let's get started. So I have recently been redoing the world in my Cinti pack, as you can see here. We still have the old island, which is over there, which is fine. But I've made all this new dock thing right here. I've basically got the new Cinti nature biome, but I've pimped it out entirely. So we've got this nice little landing dock with a big waterfall next to it. We've got a bunch of houses with this very lovely courtyard. And then, yeah, you can basically walk around. I've got a bunch of fences and stuff, blah, 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 blah. But what I'm thinking is once you go through all of here, you do stories, you know, do some basic missions over there, do some bits, you eventually travel on down to here to do a task or something, you know, that's your starting arena, it's your home, you do some quest and they're like, okay, you ready for an upgrade, come to this town, it's a big whoa, you know, kind of thing, which sounds really cool. So what I want is you eventually finish in here and they're like, okay, go outside of the bounds of the city, blah blah blah, you travel down, and then your character's walking down this path and it's like, I'm getting a weird feeling, like a magical feeling or something, and he sees these rune stones, and I don't know, maybe there's a thing that the player has to do or something. They walk up, touch one of them, it glows blue, and then, you know, you do it in a certain order, this lights up, and then you walk down, and there'll be several of these around the world kind of thing. And I think it'll be really cool to try and do it, and I do hope you like the new landscape. It's way not finished yet. You can see grasses floating on top of trees and stuff. I've got to fix all of that. I've been making it way more efficient, so all this is like a foliage instance stacker and stuff. Yeah, we'll get to that later. So that's the type of puzzle I want to go with, and I'm going to try and make it so it's kind of pseudo-random. So maybe this one's the first one, that's the second, that's the third, but then it'll randomize and some are different. And the way I'm planning to show you how to make it should hopefully make it really easily extendable to other aspects you might want to do. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is when these runes are activated. So in Skyrim you have like the turning column ones. I'm not going to do that because I don't have any models for that, but what I'm going to do is if you walk up to this and activate it, I'm thinking all these cracks in here will glow blue. So in my case I need a way to glow that blue, and it only has one material because it's a low poly aspect. So what I've decided to do instead was, as you can see on the screen now, I just simply imported this rune into Blender. You can simply right click the asset, export, and you can do whatever you want with it. And then I basically modeled a plane inside the cracks of it, and then I've just imported that plane back in. So if I come to my asset packs now, I've got my Polyelven custom, I've got these runes here. If I import these into the world, you can see I've got them here. All I'm going to do is make them a child of the corresponding ones like so. And I'm going to select them all and just simply 0, 0 everything out like that. And you can see it's kind of blocked it off there, and each one of them's got their own custom plane. If I come in and click number one's plane and drag it out, it's literally just a plane I created in Blender that I have rigged and just like shaped just so it fits inside of it like so. And then to achieve the blue glowing effect, I've created this material, dead basic one. All it is a parameter with a multiplier and a glow of 20, and it gives us this nice blue glow. Link in the description for you to download that and the planes if you want to use them. They're dead simple to create if you need it. And then all I'm going to do is select these three runes, and you'll see as I apply the material to it, you'll see the blue effect I want to go for. Now how cool does that look? When it's activated, it turns on, it just looks so cool. It's not too much to the point where it's changing the world, a little bit down here, but it's also just enough to make it look really cool. And it's such a simple effect. All I'm thinking we do is just show and hide it like that. Just something dead basic. You could make it fade up, fade out, do some effects. I'm not that artistic, so I'm just going to simply toggle it on and off. So to start, we actually need to be able to control these runes, so when you interact with them, we can turn it on or off. I'm going to come and create my first blueprint called the rune key. So I'm going to come into my content drawer, and in my blueprints folder, I'm going to create a new folder called runes. Inside here, I'm going to create a new blueprint class, type of actor, and I'm going to call call it BPA underscore rune key. So these standing stones are going to be the rune keys, and then the one in the center, or however your puzzle is set up, will be the rune lock. So you have many keys to unlock the lock, basically. And the reason we've called it BPA is if we open it up and go to class settings, in advanced I'm going to tick it as abstract class and compile and save. And what this means is we can't drag it out anymore. We have to inherit from it to use it. So this gives us several benefits, because what I can basically do inside here is create a bunch of functions and classes that can be overridden by the child ones. So for example, we know that all rune keys should probably have a function of interact. So we could come in and add a custom event called interact, like so. And then that means by default we can add some functionality to it, but then when we inherit from it by creating a child class, we can override it and then do extra things if we really need to. So what I'm going to do is make a child blueprint of this one now. So simply right click, create child blueprint class, and I'm going to call it rune key standing stone, and I'll open this one up. So for our standing stones, we simply need 2 static meshes, one for the actual stone and one for the plane inside, and each of them are the same. So inside here, I'm going to add my first static mesh, and I'll call it stone, and then I will make sure that I come back to my level, click the first standing stone, click the little magnifying glass, come back in, and simply tap the little arrow to add it in, like so. Next, we need the plane for the actual glow. So I'm going to come into my assets, make sure I select the correct asset, and then this time when I add a static mesh, you will see it will instantly try to assign it. So there's 2 ways you can do it. And then the only thing is, it's not named it or done anything, so we will call this glow, and we will make sure to assign the correct material to it, like so. Now I don't want it glowing by default, so I am just going to come and set the visibility to be none, and then when you handle your saving and loading, you'll just activate the visibility or whatnot, depending what you want to do. So now I can come back into my level, I can select this rune here, I can delete the glow out of it because we don't need it, I can make sure in my content drawer I've selected my rune, and then I can simply right click this one, do replace selected actors with, and I can select my rune key like that. And now you can see in the details view we have the glow, we can enable it all from one nice and easy blueprint just like that. And now all we need to do for these ones is the exact same process. I'm just going to drag out the rune key just so I can get the correct models. I'm going to select the rune here, click the static mesh, click back on my blueprint, and then on the stone I'm just going to assign it like that. There you go. And then I'll do the same for the glow template because we need to make sure that is correct. So I'll select the glow model here and click the plus on that. And now with that I can select the position of this, so holding shift and right click to copy. I'll click this one and do shift and click to paste, and then the last thing I'll do is shift right click rotation, delete this off and rotate this into the correct place like so. And there we go, that's another one done. And then we can do one more just here. So I'll drag in the rune key again, I will select the mesh, copy it, come back over to this one, click the stone, add it in, do the same for the glow template, click on this one, click the glow template, paste it in, and now we can come over here, we can copy the rotation, paste it onto here, and then I can copy the location, shift right click again, I can delete these old ones off, we don't need it anymore, and I can paste this in with shift left click, and there it is. There are our 3 standing stones. And with a basic rename, I'm going to call it Rune Key Standing Stone 01. This one will become Stone Key 02, and this one will become Stone 03. There we go. So how do we actually interact this? So this is going to be completely dependent of what game you have. So for example, I've got a tutorial out there to show you how to do a very basic interaction using an interface. You are more than welcome to use that. If you've got your own plugin, you can use that as well. What I'm going to give an attempt to is the new narrative interaction plugin. I've not used it very much at the moment, but it is seeming very powerful. It gives me lots more flexibility. So what I'm going to do for my instance, and again this is going to be whatever you need to do, I'm going to come into my blueprints and I'm going to create a new folder called narrative interactions, and I'm going to open it up and I'm going to create a new blueprint class, and I'm going to create a new narrative interactable component, and I'm going to call this interactable underscore rune key, and I'm going to open this one up. I'm going to delete the custom events off because we don't need them. So I'm going to come over to the functions, and you can see we've got a bunch of different functions, but the one I'm going to look at is on interact. This is after you've tried to interact, narrative interact has already said you're okay, you're not blocked or anything, and the interaction has started. So we need a way for this on interact when called to tell this rune key here to start activating. So instead of casting backwards and forwards and trying to get the right rune key and stuff, I'm going to ignore all of that. I'm going to come and create an interface instead. So I'm going to come to my interfaces and I'm going to right click blueprint interface, and I'm going to call it BPI underscore rune key, and I'll open it up. So if you think what functions a rune key will need, it will basically just need interact. That's all it's going to need, which is more than fine because it saves us memory just with a small interface. So back on my BPA rune key, I'm just going to simply add this interface to it. So in implemented interfaces, I'm going to add BPI rune key, just like that. And you'll see we don't need this interact function anymore, so I'll get rid of it. And I'll just basically double click this interact interface to implement it, and I can compile and save. So now that we have our interface we created earlier, what we can actually do from here is we can right click and do get owner, and this will tell us who owns this actor component, because this interactable acts as a component. You attach it to an actor. So from here we can basically come off and we can now tell it to interact via the BPI rune key, like so. And this means we don't have to cast. It's not tying this interactable to everything else. All it's doing is using the interface, no matter which rune key it is, and telling it to activate it. And I can compile and save. We can also come into class defaults and add some defaults if we want. So by default, I'll set the name to rune key, but we can change that. I'll keep the glowing effect for now, but eventually I will change it. And instead of interact, I will do activate. And now I can compile and save. Back on my BPA rune key, I'm going to add the interaction here, because chances are all of my rune keys need to be activated with. And you will see I will now have my interactable rune key like so. And I can compile and save. Now back on here, you will see as I click these blueprints, they will now all have an interactable rune key. So I can come and change the name to anything I want. So I will call it Standing Stone, and then I'm actually going to come and do the same thing on all of them. And then that means when we walk up to it, it should say press E or something to activate Standing Stone. So what I can do is on this rune key Standing Stone, because we know in this specific key, we just want to glow to show. The reason we're not doing it on the abstract one is you may have multiple different rune keys how you want to rotate or turn a different color or anything. You can interact with it on each child one, making it a lot more easier to customize and a lot more flexible. So on this Standing Stone, I'm going to come to the event graph, delete these off, and you'll see we've got the interface here, so I'm going to double click to interact with it. Now it's always good practice if you have a parent class that you're using from to tell it to call the parent's interface. So I'm going to right click and just do add call to parent function like so. And all this is going to do is when interact is called, it will call this child one. It'll then immediately call the parents one to do anything you put in there. So you might want some generic logging or something or anything like that. And then when we come back over to here, then it will carry on and do what it needs. So in my case, I want to grab my glow and then I want to drag off and I want to do get visible like so. And then from here, I'm going to add it to a branch like so. So if it's already visible, then we know we need to reverse the visibility. So I'm going to drag this glow in. So if it's already visible, what do we need to do? So the first thing we need to do is we need to tell it, well, stop being visible in my specific instance. So I'll just set visibility on here and I'll just set the new visibility to be none, like so. So it's basically turning it off. I'll propagate it to children just in case we do anything in the future. However, if it's false, then I'm going to copy this and paste it below, like so. And then instead of it being visible, I'm going to tick it to be visible. And just with that, that's our basic turning the glow on and off. So I can compile and save. So let's give it a try. So you see, my game is here. I can run up and there's my Standing Stone looking pretty normal. If I run up to it, you'll see it says press E to activate Standing Stone. Okay, press E, you'll see it now glows blue. There we go. There's the activation part done. I can run over and I can activate all of them like so. Now at the moment, it doesn't really do very much because it activates and doesn't do anything. So we need to start adding some custom things to it. So some sounds might be nice. Then we need to actually start the actual locking mechanism from opening up and then actually triggering when we do it in the correct sequence, which should be relatively easy to do. So let's start by adding some sounds to our runes. So I've already imported some sounds that I have on an asset pack. Unfortunately, I can't give those out because I'm not licensed to give them out. They're licensed to me. I bought them. And we've basically got some special effects, which is just little stuff that when you activate it, they'll make these sounds. So I've got a variety of different ones. So I'm just going to highlight them all, right click, and I'll do create single queue. And I will call it SC for sound queue underscore, and let's call it rune key activate. And now what we can do is we can come back to our rune key Standing Stone here. And when we activate it or deactivate it, I can basically tell it to play the sound. I'm going to drag all this across a little bit. And then what I will do is drag off this and do play sound 2D. And then I'm simply just going to drag this rune key into here because this Standing Stone will always have this sound. And I can drag this back across. So now if we compile and save and test it again, you'll see this time as I run up to it and activate it, is a custom sound which just makes it sound and look so much cooler. There we go. So now let's crack on with making our actual lock to the rune puzzle system. So now we have our standing stones, let's crack on with the rune key. So I'm going to come and create a new blueprint inside my runes folder, a blueprint class, and I'm going to call it actor BPA underscore rune lock. I'm going to open it up, and again, I'm going to take the class settings and abstract. Now that we have our BPA rune lock, we can come and create a child interface of it. I'll call it rune lock underscore standing stones, and I'll open it up. I'll then add a static mesh into it just like normal, and I'll call it standing stones, and then I'll make sure I grab the mesh from here, click it, come back in and add it into here. Now I don't actually have a glowing effect for this one to tell you when it's activated, and don't really know what to do with it yet. Maybe it shoots a beam of light Minecraft style or something. For now I'm just going to put a sphere in here that glows blue when it's activated. I'm going to come and add a basic sphere, and I'll call it glow, and then I'll move it up, make sure it's in the middle of it, shrink it down massively, just something like that maybe, and then I can come in and I can apply the blue material to it that we keep reusing. Maybe I'll have different colours around the world, and there we go. So that's what it looks like when it's turned on like that, a blue thing so you can see it's activated. That looks pretty cool, I think. The only other thing I'm going to do is make sure the sphere doesn't have a nav mesh enabled because we don't need it, and we'll also make sure it doesn't have any collision, and I'll just turn no collision, no step up, and no events because we don't need the sphere to do anything really. And I'll just jump back my rune key, and I'll just make sure that the glow effect on here also doesn't have it all enabled. You can see it can affect navigation, we don't need that, and we can also add we can remove all collision from it, no, and tick it. It's just going to make it that much more efficient. We're going to keep the stone to have it so you can't walk through it, but the actual glow doesn't need it, so we're going to get rid of that. So now we have it here, we can jump to the event graph and we can remove all of this here, we don't need it. So what type of events do we actually need on here? So this is where we start thinking about the logic to actually activate it. We need a set of rune keys that belong to the rune lock, and then we need an order of the rune keys. So there are loads of different ways we could do this. We could basically have an array of all these blueprints that we assign at runtime, and we could have another array that says the correct order. So when one of these is interacted with, it tells the lock, I've pressed this, and when it gets to the correct order, then it unlocks it, or, you know, it denies it kind of thing. Or we could give all these specific IDs, we could do it that way. I think in my instance, to keep it simple, I'm literally going to tell this rune key, these are the standing stones you have, and then it'll have a separate array of the same keys, but in the correct order it needs to join to it. Nice and simple, and really reusable. So I'm going to come back to my BPA rune lock here. So on this BPA, I'm going to come and add a variable to it, and I will call it rune keys. I'm going to set the type to be our BPA rune key, and I'm going to make sure that I select it to be an array, like so. And I'll also tick the eyeball, and I can compile and save. Now, I'm not going to add the correct order to this one, because not every puzzle will need to be done in the correct order. Some of them might just have a sequence of keys you have to toggle to the correct thing. It doesn't matter if you go left or right with it, it must be in this correct sequence for it to work. And that's not going to work if we put it on here. However, they're still going to be linked to the keys. So what I am going to do is on my standing stone lock one, this is where I'm going to add the order of it. I'm going to add a new variable called key order, and I'm going to set this type to my BPA rune key, like so. I'll show it and make sure it's set as an array, and now we can compile and save. Now if we jump back into it, we can replace this one with our new lock by replacing the actor, like so. There we go. And you'll see we've got the very nice blue effect there, look, as you can see. However, it is currently active. That's one thing I've forgot. So we can come back to the glow, and we can just set the visibility to be unticked, and we can compile and save. And there we go. So now what you'll also notice is on this rune here that we have some specific variables. So the rune keys are the variables that we need to link to it. I'm going to add 3 rune keys to it, and then I can basically come on and prepare all 3 of them, the correct ones that I want to select, like so. So now we've got the 3 rune keys like that. Next, we need the key order to take into effect. So for now, I'm actually going to keep it unticked, and what we're going to make the code do is randomly order them and place it into the key order, because I think that'll give more variety. If you ever want a set one, so for example it always will be the same pattern, then what we can do in the code is say if the key order is empty, randomize. If it's not empty, then just treat it as is, so then you overriding it. That way we don't need to add a boolean and keep track of the boolean to see whether it's overridable or not. We don't need it. So the last thing I'm going to do is just rename this to rune lock standing stones, and now we can continue with the logic. So back in my rune lock standing stones here, we need some way of telling this that the key has been interacted with, because we aren't going to be interacting with this at all, the lock. We want to interact with the individual keys, and when the keys are toggled, then it interacts with the lock. You very well might want something different, and that's completely okay. The reason we've not added the interactable to the rune lock is because we don't want to interact with it in my case. If you do want to interact with yours, so you toggle the keys, then you have to interact with the lock, then what you can do is just add the interactable or your interact code to the actual standing stones lock. So what do we need for this lock what to do. So firstly, we need a way to check the unlock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and create another interface so we don't have to link them. And I'm going to go right click blueprint interface. I'll call it BPI rune lock. And I'm going to open this up. So the first thing we need to do, we need to check the unlock. So this will say whether or not has this rune been unlocked. And then we can compile and save. Now we can jump back to our BPA rune lock and we can add this interface to it. And we can, again, just like we did before, we can implement this check unlock. And then if we ever do anything with it in the future, it's there ready for us. And I can compile and save. Then I can jump back to my rune lock standing stones and I can override it, right click, add call to parent function and link it. So this is the code where we actually check have the stones been unlocked in the correct order. So this key order is the order that is the correct passphrase basically, but we need a way to tell the order that's actually been toggled. So which key did we activate first? So I'm just going to come and duplicate this variable and I'll call it key attempt order. And we don't need to show that as visible. We don't really need it. So we can compile and save. What we need to do is every time we activate a key, we need to add it into this attempt order here. So this is where I'm going to come back to my BPI rune lock and I'm going to add a new function to it. I'm going to call it key toggle. And then inside the key toggle, I'm going to add a new input and I will call this one key and I'll set the data type to the BPA rune key. And what this is going to do is we're going to call this function on the rune lock, but from the key. So you activate the key tells the lock I've unlocked this and it adds it to the rune keys. So I'm going to double click this key toggle to implement it, compile and save, jump back to my standing stones and do the same thing. But this is where our first bit of logic starts. So this depends how you want it to work. I've named mine key toggle because I want it, if you go to key 1, you untick it, you can activate it, you can go to key 2, activate that one, but then if you come back to key 1 and activate it again, it will turn it off, meaning the second key now becomes the first key. So you can basically organize it however you want. If you don't want this and you only want to be able to activate it, if you've activated it tough, activate the other ones, then it'll clear, then you basically don't need to do this current step. But what I'm going to do is drag in my key attempt order here, and I'm going to see if it contains an item. The item I'm going to check for is this key here, and then I'll add a branch afterwards. If it contains the key, it means the key has been interacted with again. We know when you interact it with the first time, it will add it to here. Once you interact it with the second time, it will be removing it. So if it contains it, then we can simply drag in the key order, drag up and do remove, and I will add this true here, and we'll need this key over here, but this is getting a bit messy now. So what I'm going to do instead is just highlight all of this, right click and do collapse the function, and I will call it check key toggle, where you can see it passes in the key twice for some reason. We don't need it twice. I'll click into it, I'll click my function, and I'll remove the second input pin. We don't need it, and I'll just call this key. And the reason we're doing this is because now I can delete this off, connect this key up like that, just like normal, but this time instead of dragging it all the way over here, we don't need to do that anymore, but instead what we can do is just drag off of this and type get key. And that's basically a shorthand over to here that you can't do with events, you can only do it with functions, but it's a lot nicer. So it's going to come in and remove the key from it like so. Nice and easy. However, if we do attempt to open the key like here and it doesn't exist, then we need to add to it. So inside here, I'm going to come in and type add and then just copy the key back in and connect to it. However, there is one current step with the key one here, is we actually need to check completion. So what I'm going to do off of here is I'm going to say if the key order, and I'm going to get the length, and I'm going to say equals the same length as the key order, which we know is basically the passphrase to unlock it. If it equals the same number, because if there's 3 keys, there's 3 unlocks, then in my case, I can now proceed on to check the key toggle. This doesn't mean it's unlocked, it just means it's proceeding to now check, is it in the correct order? I can drag in my event check unlock like so. And that's the function we're going to stick with there. So now we can move over to our check unlock, where it actually checks the correct order, which is here. So we need to basically loop over this key attempt order and say for each one of these, is it the exact same key sequence as key order like so. So I'm going to come over and loop over key attempt order, and then what I'm going to do from key order here is I'm going to drag off and do get, and we can add in an integer to say which array index to get, and I'm going to get the exact same one we're checking here. So if we're checking this key attempt order 0, 1, 2, 3, however many keys you have, we're basically getting the key passphrase and saying give me number 1, give me number 2, give me number 3, and then from here we can drag the array element off and do equals, and we can connect this item up here. So we're saying are these 2 objects correct? I'll add a branch and connect up to it. So here's the next part we need to look at. We actually need a way of telling is 0 correct, and then is 1 correct, is 2 correct, and only if all of them are correct then we can proceed. But we need a variable to store the logic of this so we know at each iteration. But with an event, if we were to create it here, that variable will be available throughout the entirety of the game. We don't want that. We only want it to be available when we actually check the lock. So we could convert this to a function and go that way. However, there is another way with the interfaces to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come and delete this check unlock interface here, and from the parent. And then on my BPI rune lock, where we've got check unlock, I'm simply going to add an output of unlocked, and I'll set it to a type of boolean. And the reason we're doing this is events can't have a return value. However, a function can. So now if I add this check unlock here, you'll see it's automatically a function. So I can compile and save. I can jump back to my standard zones and do the exact same thing. Check unlock, and now we can add our code into here, and we have the function, the benefits of a function. So I can copy my code in, and it can start checking it like so. Nice and simple. So I'm going to come in and add a local variable. I'm going to call it is unlocked. I'll set it to a boolean and make sure it's just a single ID. What I'm going to do is if they equals the same thing, so 0 index of key attempt order and 0 index of key order are the same, then I'm not going to do anything. But instead, if it's false, then I'm going to come down and I'm actually just going to set it to false like so. And the reason we're doing this is by default over here, I'm just going to set the is unlocked to true. So by default, when it comes in, it's going to be true. But then when it starts looping over it, if it finds that key order 1 and 1 are the same, true, okay, doesn't need to do anything, it's already true. If 2 and 2 are the same, good. But if 3 and 3 are different for whatever reason, then it'll come to the false icon and untick it, meaning it's false. And then when we come down to the completed down here, what we can do is we can add a branch in on our is unlocked here, and only if this is true after checking it all, then we can finally tell it unlock the lock. So I'm going to come back to my rune lock and add our third and final function of unlock. And I'll hit compile and save. Back in our rune lock, I will implement unlock, compile and save, and I'll do the same on our rune lock here. Drag off the true and call unlock like so. Now we can hit compile and save, jump back to our event graph, and then finally we can just implement the unlock. I will then right click, add call to parent, join it up, and then this is where we basically code it to do anything we want now. So the first thing I know I need it to do is I need it to make the glow visible, and once it's visible you can't interact with it anymore, so we can just tick it as visible and ignore it. I also want it to play a sound, so I'll drag in play sound 2D. I want it to play this spell hit effect here, which I think would be pretty cool. We'll click that on like so. And then this is where you'll go off, unlock your door, unlock your dungeon, play your dialogue, do whatever you really do. For me, it'll just do like that for now. The only other thing we've got as well is on the check unlock, when we're actually checking if it's unlocked, then on the false, I'm going to come and play sound 2D. And this one will be the failed sound effect, to show you, and minorly, you've not done it. And then we just need to make sure that we return at all the different places we can. So has it been unlocked? No. Has it been unlocked here? Yes. You very well may use this variable someday, you may not, but it just helps us with this like so. Now we can hit compile and save. So the only other thing we've got to do now is actually tell the keys to tell our code toggle the key. That's it. Now in programming, there is something called a circular reference, and they are, for the majority of the part, considered bad and should be avoided. Now what a circular reference is at the moment we have this lock here talking to these keys. This lock has variables to make it aware or store in memory access to these keys, which is fine. However, if the key needs to tell the lock that it's unlocked, then we now have the lock being aware of the key and the key being aware of the lock. So we now have a circle, and that's called a circular reference, and it's often considered bad to do because then as the code's trying to compile, it'll get the lock says it needs the key, but then the key says it needs the lock, so then it'll have to come back, but then you'll be going key needs lock needs T, blah 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 blah. It's not considered very good ways of designing things. So what we can do to get around this is instead we can use event dispatchers. We can tell the key, once you've been interacted with, just interact, but then we can tell the lock to watch when this has been interacted with and then action it. So I'm going to come and open up my rune key, my BP abstract rune key, and I'm going to add a new event dispatcher called on interact, and then back onto my specific standing key here. After we interact with it and we set the visibility, what I'm actually going to do is drag it across, and then I'm going to call my event dispatcher. So in here I will call on interact, which will say right here call on interact like so. We do however need to make it pass in the key that's been interacted with, otherwise the lock won't be aware of it. So back on the BPA rune key, I'm going to click the on interact event dispatcher, and I'm going to add an input at the top, call it key, and I'll just type BPA rune key, and I'll compile and save. Back on our standing stone, you can see now this key needs a reference to which key it's saying has been interacted with. I'm just going to type self because it is a rune key. And now that we've done this, we can successfully jump back to our rune lock here, and then I'm going to add a begin play. Then I'm going to get a list of the keys from the rune lock, so get rune keys, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to loop over all of this, and then from this array element I'm going to come in and do assign. I'm going to do bind on interact, and we'll see bind event on interact like so, and we can connect it up. So this is us using the event dispatcher we set up on the key, and then we know the one we need to call is this event key toggle here. here. So we can just drag this up, connect it like so. So it'll say loop over all these keys. When we interact with it, tell our lock to check the key. And then when the key has been checked, unlock it if we're all good. So it's all piecing together very nicely now. So the only other thing we need to implement is the actual attempt the key order randomization part. And this is really easy to do. So on the onCompleted, after it's bound all the rune keys, make sure you don't do it after the bind. That will go wrong. Now I'm going to come and add a new function up here, call it randomize key order, because you very well, if you get it wrong, you might want it to randomize again. You never know. Or you might want to call it on load or something like that. So in here, all we're going to do is grab the key order and do a set by holding the Alt key. And then I'm going to right click and do get rune keys. And I'm going to assign it straight to it. Now at the moment, this is just going to take the keys we have and assign it to the key order. But what we do is we drag off of this and just simply type shuffle like so. And that will reshuffle the elements inside that array to a random order. But the only other check we have to do, if you remember at the beginning, if key order has got anything, then we need to ignore it. So I'm going to drag off and do is empty, and then I'll add a branch to it. And then if it's empty, true, then we want to come across it and we want to randomize it. If it's not false, then we don't touch it, we just ignore it. And then finally on the event graph, we can now come in and plug in the randomized key order. So I know this seems a little bit complex, but it's a fully extensible system. Follow it along and you should have a good system, but we'll run through it again in a minute once it's working. So at the moment, we've linked the rune keys to it, but we don't have a key order. So let's play it. And now one little tip, if we hold shift and press F1, we will break out. So you can see my mouse cursor is working. I can hit the pause button and then the eject button here. This means I can basically move around the world while the game character is here live. So I can come and click my standing stones here, and you can see the key order has now been added in. If I drag this out, you can see the order of my rune keys is 1, 2, 3. This is 3, 2, 1. It has successfully shuffled it. So if we click the controller and jump back into play, you can see now if we run up and start with number 1, it activates. Then we do number 2, it activates, do number 3, and it should fail. So it's basically failed. It's not yet deactivated all the stones, so we do need to look at doing that. So just for now, so we need to deactivate the stones if we fail it basically, because that's not going to work very well. So I'm going to come back to my rune lock standing stone, and where we call check unlock, where we play the failed sound here, I'm just going to drag this across a little bit. So I'm going to drag out my key attempt order, simply drag off and do clear. So we'll empty it out. But currently as it stands, the attempt has been cleared, but the runes are still activated. I'm going to drag this across here, right click and do get rune keys. Then I'm going to loop over all of this, and then we're basically just going to tell it to hard deactivate the keys. So if we jump back to our BPA key, we don't actually have a way to deactivate it at the moment. We can only interact with it, which will toggle between them and call interact, which is not what we want. So I'm going to come back to my interfaces, my BPI rune key. I'm going to add one called key turn off, and I'll compile and save. Technically, you could add one called key on if you wanted an NPC to run up and do it. I don't want that for my game, so I'm just going to keep key turn off. Back on the BPA rune key, I'm going to implement key turn off just for now, compile and save. And then back on my rune key standing stone, I can come in, implement key turn off, and add a call to the parent like so. And now where we come in, if it's visible false, we deactivate it. I'm just going to drag this over here like so and connect it up just like that. And then up here, instead of just leaving it empty, we can just come in and call key turn off. Again, if you were doing the key turn on, if you ever wanted an NPC to be helpful, run up and go, let's pick this one first kind of thing, add a key turn on, and then just do the same thing. However, if you are doing the key turn on, I would probably add the sound effect into it. I don't want all three of them to go bing when it all turns off because they failed the activation, which is why I'm only keeping it when the player interacts with it. I'll hit compile and save, and now back on our rune lock with our standing stones, we can come here and simply call the interface that we created key turn off, and we'll use the BPI key turn off message, and then we can connect all three of these just on the completed like so. So it will come in, if we've not unlocked it because we've failed the passphrase, it will play the fail sound, it will loop over all the keys, turn them all off without playing any sounds or effects, it'll just turn the glow off, and then we will clear the attempt order and return, so the player can officially attempt again. Now, while testing, there was one little flaw that I've found in the code, where on the key, we're coming and playing the sound, which is correct, we're then telling the lock to check itself, and then setting the state of the rune of the key. However, if the call on interact checks if we've unlocked it and fails, then it turns them all off, but then this simply comes on and turns it straight back on again, which is not very good. So what I'm going to do is actually take this event here and remove it out and move all this back, and instead I'm just going to paste it right at the end and connect it to both like so. And you can double click on lines to add a new one if you need to. So what this is going to do now is when we get to the third one and we activate it, it's not going to check if it's unlocked. It will set the activate of the rune. You can then delay it if you want to play some mystical sounds, and then it will attempt to unlock it, and then it will turn them all off. So let's try this one last time. So I'm going to press Shift F1 to come in. I'm going to scroll very to the bottom, click my standing stone so you can see 3, 2, 1 is the order. So I will fail it on purpose. So let's do this one. And then we'll do number 2. And then we'll do number 3. And you should see it's failed and they've all successfully turned off. You could do some more artistic effects, but that's fine. So let's actually do it in the correct order now. So the correct order is number 3, which I believe is this one. And then the number 2 is this one. And then finally is this one. We should see it's played the effect and the blue glow is there. Ladies and gentlemen, the rune is unlocked. How cool is that? It's such a cool feeling. So you can see now it's all fully unlocked like that. We need to make it so you can't activate it again because we can technically come in and we can turn it off. We don't really want that. Once it's unlocked, that's it. It's deactivated. But there we go. So now your effect can happen. You can gain some points, play some dialogue, do whatever you want really. So let's go in and deactivate the runes after we've finished it. So I'm going to come back to my BPI rune key. I'm going to add a new function called deactivate, and I'll compile and save. Back on my BPA rune key, I will add in deactivate, and then this one we don't actually need to append on the children. So on this one, I'm going to drag in the interactable rune key, drag it from here, and do deactivate, activation, deactivate here. And what this is going to do on my specific narrative plugin is it will deactivate the plugin, make it stop working basically. If you haven't got the narrative plugin or using your own interaction, what you need to do is basically tell it cannot be interacted with anymore. This may be removing the component. If yours is component based, you may have your own deactivate function, or you simply have to add a boolean that it checks when it interacts. Either way. And now that we've called deactivate here, we just need to actually tell the lock to action it. So back on my BPA rune lock, if it calls unlock, we know it's successfully unlocked it. I know at that point I don't want to be able to play with any of it anymore, so I'm going to grab all of the rune keys that we've linked to it, and I'm just simply going to drag off and pass on the deactivate message like so. So if you want it like on some of Skyrim's puzzles, once you've unlocked the door's unlocked permanently, but you can still rotate them. Don't put it on your abstract one, put it on your specific one here, and then just make it block it if it's already unlocked. So just before we do try it, one temporary thing I'm going to do, just so we can check whether you can uninteract with one of them, is I'm going to come back to my BP lock standing stones, and I'm actually going to make the key attempt order visible. And the reason we're doing this is if we click play, if I break off and come into it here, we can now see the order that we attempt to click it. So if I run up to number 1 and click it, we can see it's been added to the key attempt order number 1 there. If I come and activate number 3, it will add number 3. But what if we go, actually, I don't want to try one, I've already tried this. What if we unactivate it? So I click it and you'll see it's now been removed. Then I can come and activate number 2 and go, actually, no, I think I did want that one first. So we'll come up to number 3, we'll deactivate it. You can see it's disappearing. We'll come back to this one and activate this. And you'll see it's failed, it's not activated it, but we know we can at least take it on and off. How cool is that? But now if we come and activate it in the correct order, so number 3, then it'll become number 1. Then we can activate number 2, and then it has successfully unlocked like so. And if I come and try to activate it now, you can't. This is permanently active. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? Such a cool effect. The sounds really add to it. Add some dialogue, add a shooting beam, some special power-ups or some enemies, whatever you want to do. Maybe even a portal in this random thing here that I've got, or that one, either way. Place a couple of these around, different colours. It's going to look absolutely epic. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the Rune Unlock framework. Super, super simple to add. Really, really flexible. Just running back through it, for those who may have got a little bit confused with it, it's built up from 2 key principles, a key and a lock. One lock can have multiple keys. So in this case, we have a lock, which has our standing stone, and then it has 3 keys. The lock has 3 variables it uses, in my specific case. The rune keys, which is the one you always need to populate. This is whichever keys are linked to this specific rune. This makes it extremely flexible, instead of sticking it all in the same blueprint, because it very well may be one of those quests where you have to explore all dimensions of the world. So this one over here could be well over there, so far away you couldn't even see it. But when you activate all 3 of them, this will still activate. The next 2 variables are the key order, which is the specific unlock order we need in order to unlock this code. So in Skyrim, it might be the eagle, the whale, and the scorpion, I think it is, or whatever order. We have made it so if you don't put a key order in, it will randomize. If you do put a key order in, it will use that key order. And then finally, the key attempt order, which we can actually come and hide away because we don't need it visible anymore. anymore. It's the order that the player attempts it. So if they click this one first, it will add it to the array. If they click this one, it will add it, and then this one, it will add it again as well. The rune lock has its own special interface, which controls all the different functions in it. The check unlock basically says, have they unlocked it? Check the correct order, check they've put the correct number in, they've got the correct key in the inventory, something like that. The key toggle basically turns the key on or off to tell the lock this key has been triggered, this passphrase has been triggered, something like that. You don't have to implement that one, you can find another way. And then you've finally got unlock, which basically tells it unlock the door, the dimension, the portal, the chest, the safe, anything. And that's all implemented inside the abstract interfaces. And then the key, the exact same, has its own interfaces of interact when we actually walk up and turn it. When we toggle it, the key turn off, which turns the rune off by itself. So if they fail, it turns it off, and then deactivate. And this framework is so far, I think, it can really be expanded to do anything you want. If you think of something like Dishonored safe, your lock would be the safe, your keys would be the little digits you have to dial, the key order could be an integer, the key order, which is not linked to the rune keys, that's just the little dials. So on the actual child of it, you wouldn't have a key order, you would have a number sequence, say 1, 2, 3 or 5, 2, 7, something like that. And then on your check unlock, instead of checking the simple position of it, all it'll do is connect to the current key attempt order, get the current digit of the wheel as it turns, and check it against the key order. It's really expandable. I'm going to continue and make some cool, more little rune puzzle things around the game, because I think it'd be cool. Have some dungeons with some puzzle doors. If you fail, spawn a trap. You could do so much with it. Let me know what type of puzzles you're going to use this system in your game for. Maybe even link me a video. It'll be really cool to see. Thank you for watching. My name is Decryption. If you've got any issues, let me know below. Feel free to join the Discord. I'm always around if you need any help, and I'll see you next time.